Hello and welcome to the rMetroidvania podcast. My name is Professor Q.
And this is Caldreth from the rMetroidvania Discord and subreddit.
Hi, this is Master. I'm also from there.
And do you want to introduce what we're going to have playing in the background, Caldrath?
So this is the DLC for Lords of Shadow 2, where you play as Alucard. I figured almost nobody's played this, most likely, and it's Castlevania, so we might as well at least experience it.
Yeah, just showing the
Or
background.
something.
This is a game that I've always wanted to play, but I just haven't gotten around to it for reasons. I probably should play this just to have a different angle on what Castlevania can be.
Yeah, it's kind of more God of War-ish, like the old trilogy of God of War.
Yeah, and I never really I really like Devil May Cry, but that's like the limit of what I enjoy in that particular genre of action game. So that was part of the reason why I never just sought out playing Lords of Shadow myself. And then now it's like it's not really a Metroidvania game, so it's hard to prioritize reviewing it, especially when the release schedule is so thick right now. So I just have never gotten around to it.
The first Lords of Shadow has ability upgrades, and then you can go back to previous areas, so kind of a crest-like thing going on. And then the second one also has ability upgrades. It kind of has an interconnected map, but for most of the game, you're kind of railroaded all around it. So it kind of sort of becomes Metroidvania-ish towards the end. I guess kind of similar to like Arkham Asylum and Tomb Raider. Where like the vast majority of the game, it doesn't feel very Metroidvania.
I've been told that the Tomb Raider games are Metroidvania, and that I should review them.
You've been fed lies.
Like it has ability gates, and like you get the upgrades to get through the ability gates, at least in the first Tomb Raider. But it's generally like you get the ability, and then you run into the ability gate on the linear path, and now you just go through it.
That's a Kid Dracula like. That's what that's all about. Kid Dracula was a fascinating game. I think that game would have been a lot better if it was more like Mega Man, where you could select which level you went to. But so, do they actually have a plot with this Alucard DLC? Like, is it a full-fledged thing, or is it just a playable character in the main story?
It's a separate plot.
Well, that's good.
Basically, your job is to go place the ability upgrades in the castle that Dracula needs to progress.
That's interesting. So you're helping Dracula.
Yeah.
In this one. Maybe that adds a little bit more depth to Mirror of Fate.
Yeah, like in this one you start with the bat cloud, and then you get the bat cloud almost immediately, and then you have to use it immediately. And then like you almost immediately get the other two abilities too. Whereas in the regular game it takes a while for you to get the other upgrades.
Huh. Interesting.
And the other thing is the weapon that you use in this game, or as Alucard, is the Chrysogrim.
Oh.
Oh.
But that doesn't look nearly anything like the Chrysogrim. Like I was saying, I kind of felt like the Alucard in Lords of Shadow was more of a fan service thing than it was. Like, I don't know. I have to play it though and see it for myself, I suppose. I was talking before the stream that I kind of judged Lords of Shadow based off of Mirror of Fate because that's my only exposure to it. And in my opinion, that game's story is so incoherent. It might make more sense if you play the other Lords of Shadow games, and maybe that's what the expectation is.
It doesn't really link up too much.
Not really.
Yeah, like the time periods between the games is so far apart. Like at least hundreds of years between each game that it doesn't really matter that much.
So for this DLC, do they explain what Alucard's origins are?
Nope.
I see.
I literally started the video at the start of the game.
Huh. That's interesting. So you just play as Alucard. So would Alucard make sense without Mirror of Fate? I'm just interested in. Well, anyway.
Yeah, see it. You can see the upper left chrysogram.
I do think it's funny that they chose the chrysogram. Has the chrysogram shown up in any other game besides Symphony of the Night? I'm really curious. I don't know that it has.
Oh.
I think it's just a word at this point.
Well, anyway, do we want to move on to the topic of the night, or the first topic of the night?
Oh boy, I can't wait.
Master has lots of insight for this topic. So, what was it, last week or the week before? They just announced that they are working on a new sequel to Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which is zero surprise to me that they would have been working on that.
As opposed to a sequel to Curse of the Moon, which they already got out.
Which they already got out. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously Inti Creates is working on that on their own. I'm not sure exactly how the licensing for that worked, but Inti Creates seems like they kind of make games out of passion. At least that's the impression I get from them, so I think they just wanted to make more Curse of the Moon, but I don't know, maybe not. Maybe they were paid by Iga's team to do it.
I feel like Inti Creates just like gets licensed to make a game with a certain like IP, and then they just make whatever game they wanted to make anyway.
Yeah,
just,
that might be the case.
Because they make pretty similar styles of games.
I don't know if they've ever made really a Classicvania type game before Curse of the Moon. But they do a lot of very similar Mega Man style games.
Yeah, those Mega Man style games are pretty similar to Classicvania. It's just like there's a little bit extra non-linearity there.
I mean, Classicvania is a lot more slow.
Yeah.
Especially compared to like the X version of Mega Man. So anyway, I thought it would be fun to talk about what our hopes for the sequel of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. I guess maybe we start with our biggest criticisms of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night that might be fixed in a sequel.
Yeah, I guess my main criticism would be the tram pass and the like underwater, getting the ability to move underwater.
The three major obtuse progression points, you mean?
Yeah.
The tram pass I actually figured out on my own, and the water thing I actually just got. Like, I got lucky with that one. The one that really threw me off was the spike armor. That was hidden in a corner of that tower.
The spike armor was garbage for so many different reasons.
I
really had no problem with the spike armor for some reason.
That was the one where I drew the line, where it was just like, okay, now it's really just crossing over into, in my opinion, poorly designed progression.
The main problem with the spike armor for me is that it's really out of the way in an area that's actively hard to navigate, not through any, like, it doesn't feel like it's supposed to be hard to navigate, but because of the weird 3D thing they're doing, it is.
So for everybody who hasn't,
that doesn't make sense.
For everybody who hasn't played Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, there's a point in the game where you have to get past this big hallway full of spikes, and you can technically face tank your way through it. I think a lot of players have done that, which is not something I thought of doing because maybe I just wasn't powerful enough to face tank your way through it.
But you can just go to the menu and use healing items.
But anyway, if you played Symphony of the Night before, you'll know that there's probably some kind of armor that protects you from spikes, and that's what it is. But the armor is hidden in... It's not like a room or anything. It's like in the corner of this rotating tower map. If you haven't played Bloodstained, now you know this, and so you'll probably have a much easier time with it. But it's just... really hard to find. Like most things in Metroidvania game, or most of the time in a Metroidvania game, if you get lost, you can usually just look at your map and look for doors that you haven't accessed yet and just go find them. But this one, I don't think there was any door or indicator. It was just a corner of the map. Like you have to kind of be obsessive compulsive completionist to get it.
And you have to use a certain special ability to get to it that also like it kind of weirdly affects things, especially in that area.
Did you need invert to get that one?
I wasn't gonna say invert, but yeah.
Invert was I don't feel bad about spoiling invert because it was in the trailers, so before the game was released. Yeah, that makes it even more confusing, honestly. So yeah, those are definitely some major complaints, and I would agree that the water thing would be a lot worse if I hadn't gotten it like right away. Gambling for progression just seems kind of off to me. Maybe if you automatically got the ability the first time you killed an enemy in that room, it would make sense. Wow, instant death.
He did kind of get impaled.
Well, then it just lets me through anyway.
What?
Oh, this game is great.
Well, somebody
like you failed, you don't get to try again, but go on.
Do you get a reward if you get it right the first time?
I eventually come back and do it correctly and get a reward, so probably.
I'm seeing some Mirror of Fate isms here with the way you're collecting journals from these dead soldiers.
Yeah.
I thought that was a weird thing in Mirror of Fate, how that was like the only way you could save. Was by getting collectibles. Very strange. Other criticisms of Bloodstained besides the progression. I feel like that's a simple fix. Just don't do that.
Some people didn't like the art style. I was thinking it would be cool if they updated the shader to make it look more like the Yami Kojima like art style. They did like Aria Sorrow and stuff like that. Like, I was thinking maybe they could make it look like Guilty Gear or Genshin Impact with that anime style. But a lot of people were complaining about the like generic anime look of Dawn of Sorrow.
Plus you have to kind of have the gothic broody look, but maybe you could pull it off. Guilty Gear seems like it would be appropriate. Maybe. I think it'd be cooler if it made. I mean, it'd be really nice if they made it look more like the concept art, as you were saying. The what was the name? Yami
Kojima.
Was it? Is it Kojima?
Yeah, I literally looked it up right before this.
Funny how all these last names seem to be shared.
Maybe Kojima's like Smith in Japan.
It's possible. I mean, family names do get passed around like that. Yeah. Honestly, I'm not sure, like, from a budget standpoint, if it's possible for them to make the art that much better, but I could be wrong. I mean, they could develop some way to make it cheaper. I personally felt that the backgrounds looked pretty good in Bloodstained at the very least. If not, the characters could have used some work. So
We probably put effort into the animations.
yeah,
I felt like they were a little bit generic, but I think that's been like fairly consistent in Castlevania that they've been pretty generic looking animations.
I don't know. They
That's
look good in
true.
the pixel art. I think Glory of Ecclesia looks great. This is a problem with a lot of whenever you do a 2.5D game like that, though, is that the animations are usually what suffer the most. They're not as expressive as what you would normally get with pixel art because you're not as focused on keyframes. I think is the reason why.
Yeah, you're kind of forced, like with sprites, you're forced to make more keyframes because every single frame of animation is a keyframe.
Right. Yeah, because you're jumping between multiple frames, whereas you don't have to do that with polygons. I don't know why it's not as big of a deal when you do a 3D game like this. Maybe it's a perspective thing. Because in 2D you can see the flaws more starkly because everything's on the screen at once most of the time.
Well, I think it's more of just like budget. Like generally, if you do a 3D action game, they're gonna put a lot of money into making the animations look good because that's kind of the selling point of these games.
I wonder
You
if
can
it's
also use camera angles to hide bad animations that you don't want to make properly.
yeah, that's what I was thinking, but I kind of wonder if the reason why they don't put more budget into those 2D games is because the expectation from the consumer standpoint is to pay less for those. That was another thing, is that Bloodstained launched at $40 and everybody complained about it. But I mean, given that it has David Hayter and other voice actors and the general production values of the game, the price really isn't that surprising to me. But I know that people didn't like the idea of paying that much for a 2D Metroidvania game.
I mean, it also had a successful Kickstarter to specifically fund that.
I mean, you can.
Yeah, but everyone who paid for the Kickstarter got it for free, so they already paid the money for that. So it's all the people who didn't pay for the Kickstarter who are paying the $40.
Also, I'm willing to bet that they spent their Kickstarter fund pretty early on. I think they had to have investors, didn't they?
Yeah, didn't they say that he was making the Kickstarter just to prove that there was demand?
Maybe so. That's generally what Kickstarters are. Like, everybody thinks that Kickstarters are about funding the game, but they usually aren't. Kickstarter is generally used as a marketing tool. Because for whatever reason, people kind of latch on to Kickstarter. People like dreams, I guess.
Too bad dreams, when you wake up, the dream isn't there anymore.
It seems to happen, but people seem to forget pretty quickly. Like, people forget that Mighty Number 9 was basically a scam. But then, as I said, the cost of that game probably was higher than what it made on the Kickstarter. Now, games get expensive very quickly, especially when you have a team. Depending on what your game looks like. They're either really expensive or you're doing it all by yourself as one person and just sacrificing to make it happen. Doing it unpaid. Not that the money doesn't help these indie developers, but I think that oftentimes that's less the point. It's getting people invested early on.
Yeah.
Too early.
Well, and sometimes the indie developers just needs to be able to pay for their bills. They don't have to have a full-time job.
Yeah. Yeah, but if they make $20,000 in their Kickstarter, how long is that really going to last?
Make it last if you live cheap enough.
That's true.
Yeah, just don't live in California or something.
Right. Yeah, I mean, as far as rent is concerned, that's not going to last you too long. Not to mention food and other expenses. It's a risky business. But anyway, on the subject of Bloodstained, the art style. What about gameplay mechanics? What do we think could be improved as far as that is concerned?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know if you can really say improve the combat without just making a different kind of combat.
Well, let's compare it to... Well, you haven't played Order of Ecclesia Master, but have you played Calderoth?
Yeah.
What is it that made Order of Ecclesia deeper as far as the combat is concerned? I definitely felt it was deeper.
I don't know, the multiple weapons. I don't know. It's been a long time since I played it. And it seemed pretty similar to like Aria of Sorrow and such. Besides, like how you acquired abilities.
I don't know. Did you feel it was harder when you played it? I mean, I definitely felt it when I replayed it last year or a couple of years ago. At this point, I think that one of the biggest features that sets Ecclesia apart is that you essentially have infinite magic right from the start of the game, and thus the combat could have been balanced around that. Whereas in Bloodstained, you start out kind of like you have to use these piddly weapons, and then by the end of the game, you've eaten enough food to get your magic regeneration up high enough that you can just kind of spam the most powerful spells over and over again. There's not really any sense of combat dynamic. Like, they brag that they could beat every boss with just a dagger, but I think that that's part of the problem as far as their combat design is concerned, that they don't... It's a careful thing to balance. Like, clearly Bloodstained is more about player expression and doing what you want, and less about creating a dynamic challenge like with Hollow Knight and its boss encounters. Like Hollow Knight, you just have your nail and you have 4 spells by the end of the game, and that's it for any boss.
Yeah.
So all of those.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
So are you saying that the expectation in Aria of Sorrow is that you just use your weapons most of the time and spells are like a special occasion kind of thing, whereas Ecclesia, the spells were more integrated with the rest of the combat?
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. Why I think Ecclesia felt more challenging and deeper when it came to the combat, because just using weapons used up your magic, because your weapons were essentially a form of spell in that game. And I think balancing your combat around a core mechanic like that would help make it work better. I guess what I'm saying is that Bloodstained 2 really should have Miriam become Shinoa and how she works. I think that would be... I mean, if you want to just cop out, that would actually be a nice, cheap way of doing it. One of the biggest problems with Bloodstained is, in my opinion, is that the combat is... I don't know, wonky or lopsided. Like, some bosses are tough and then other bosses just go down in a couple of hits. It's the same problem that Symphony of the Night had. And I felt like in Aria and Dawn and Portrait, they did a pretty decent job balancing the fights a little bit better. And then Ecclesia kind of represents the best form of that combat. And then like Bloodstained kind of regressed with its combat.
Yeah, the IGA games have been pretty consistently bad at balancing XP, I think is the biggest problem. Like, I bet the unbalanced difficulty was more due to, like, certain bosses you get more XP between them than other ones. Like, when I was playing Bloodless mode, the difficulty seemed more even across all the different bosses.
Interesting. Yeah.
See, if they just threw out this XP mechanic, just instantly, all the games would be so much better.
Possibly. I think another issue that Bloodstained had was that they kind of went a little overboard with the systems. Like, they had the food system, they had the crafting system, they had the shard system. And balancing that would be a nightmare, and I just don't think they even tried. Or they just beat the entire game with a dagger and said, okay, this is possible with just a dagger, so the game's good. Like, I don't think that there was a concerted effort to focus on the game's challenge at all.
Yeah. I don't know, they're at least like different systems, aren't redundant. I mean, food is your improving your passive stats, and then you have the shards for your active or similar abilities, and then was upgrading for weapons. Well, the crafting, I guess,
Yeah.
and then you could also craft
You
consumables.
craft new weapons. Sometimes you needed old weapons in order to make new weapons.
And there were also some passive shards.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, like
The yellow
I don't think
shards.
it would be too hard to balance those systems because you could consider them mostly independently, and
Maybe
nothing's
so.
crossing over there. That just makes it impossible.
I think that part of the problem also is they have to take into account that some players won't care for specific systems and they want to make them optional. But in that process, anybody who does use them is going to have a very easy time. So I think it was very ambitious. I don't think that Bloodstained 2 should necessarily drop the systems. If it was an indie developer, working on this, I would say that you should probably scale back because you can make a better game with that. But I feel like it would disappoint a lot of fans if Bloodstained 2 isn't at least as robust with its systems as Bloodstained 1.
Why would you want to scale back when you can have 3D set pieces?
Oh man, maybe Bloodstained 2 is going to be fully 3D.
Koji Igarashi did say that he's always wanted to make a 3D Castlevania game, although he did do that with a couple of games. I wouldn't mind if they did a Curse of Darkness style game with Bloodstained 2. That would be really cool, in my opinion. I would be very happy for that.
Hope they make Castlevania 64 too.
Castlevania 64 too.
Not 65.
They should just call it Bloodstained 64. Ritual of the Fright.
Oh, jeez.
Oh gosh. How do you feel about having to go in these skill trees after every combat?
Well, I think that it's more just like they give you enough XP that you can upgrade that quickly. It becomes less of a thing, like in the main game, is less of a thing as you go on.
So
Are they the same upgrades that you get in the main game?
Pretty much, yeah. Like the trees are pretty mirrored too. Like the top one is the like X button single target attacks, and the bottom was the Y button multi-target attacks. And it's just like the same version, like the same ability. It's just like now this was the multi-target version of the skill, and this is the single target version. Although one interesting thing this game does is this mastery level thing, where if you use an ability enough times, then you fill up the mastery meter for that particular skill, and then once it's maxed out, you can transfer it to the weapon itself, and that increases the damage you do. So it kind of encourages you to use different skills.
It kind of sounds like it encourages you to use the same skill over and over so you can get a high enough level.
What I said was like what seems like their intention, but it winds up being use one skill until it's maxed out. Now stop using that skill forever. Use a different skill until it's maxed out. So on and so forth.
That's the Ratchet and Clank problem. That's what I did in Ratchet all the time. This weapon's not leveled yet. This is why I think that just dropping leveling systems entirely is better. Just balance your weapons so that they're just fun to use. I don't think the leveling systems improve a lot of things. Not to say that I'm completely against leveling systems, but... I like XP pools better, rather than using the same ability over and over again to upgrade that specific ability. I like getting XP into a pool and then I purchase the abilities I want. That's, in my opinion.
Well, that's kind of what the skill tree is, where you have a certain number of points and then you buy skills with them.
Yeah. So anyway, Bloodstained. Any other thoughts? Any other about any of the mechanics? Any of the castle? Or we already talked about castle design, sort of. Any kind of biomes that we've never seen before that you would like to see?
Well, obviously we need a clock tower.
They had a clock tower.
Yeah, I know.
The first one.
All of them have clock clock towers.
Is there anything that they could add to a castle? Like they added the desert area, they had the ice area, they had the lava area. Like, what is something completely original that they could do with the castle just to not make it feel like you're in the same castle again?
Just don't make it take place in a castle.
Yeah, that's an option. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, it's Bloodstained, not Castlevania. There's no need for a castle.
That's true. Heck, the
It
original Bloodstained.
literally starts on a ship. It's fine. It works.
Yeah, I mean, the world traveling thing that you did in Castlevania Bloodlines would have been really cool if they did that in Bloodstained. Of course, then you start to stray from it being a Metroidvania in people's eyes, but I don't think that there's a problem with having multiple zones with explorable maps. Could be good.
Is that at all like Portrait of Ruin?
Yeah, I was thinking Portrait of the or like Ecclesia is. I guess what I'm really saying is I'd like to see them do Ecclesia but better. I mean, they kind of just did Aria of Sorrow, but with a deeper crafting system. I'm not going to say better because I feel like Aria of Sorrow. I personally like Aria of Sorrow more because it's more compact and more focused.
Yeah.
But so what about plot? Any hopes for the plot?
I don't think they can ever be good. So no.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what the next progression for the plot would be.
I'd like to see more characterization. Like, I guess what's his bucket? David Hayter was the only character that got any real development. Like Jable, like they suggest that they have a history, but you never really get to see or feel that history, so you never connect in the way that they're supposed to be connected. Then you had generic wizard guy who has to get his book or whatever. He's just such a stereotype that it's hard to connect with him. And then the villain just kind of, or the main villain just kind of comes out of nowhere. And I really I honestly don't know what they like from a lore standpoint. I wasn't invested enough to really know everything that they could do with the lore. All I really want is just some character development some characters that you can really latch onto.
Yeah, I think it's funny that it comes out of nowhere, but it's still predictable.
Right.
Like, if that's the case with your game, you should probably reconsider how you make your plots.
Right.
The thing is, did Castlevania have a lot of good characterization? Is this
No.
a departure?
I felt
It's not.
Okay, so Shinoa I think is probably one of the stronger ones. I think Alucard and Dracula had some depth in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Like, you learned about how his mother died, and there's a little bit of the I have to kill my own father going on there. I'm not saying it's great, but I'd say that Symphony of the Night is one of the stronger of the bunch. Soma had a lot of potential that wasn't realized, but I felt like it had a lot of potential. But yeah, I think that Koji Igarashi just needs to get some good writers in there to really upgrade that aspect of the game. I think that above anything else that could be done with Bloodstained would be the thing that elevates it above its predecessor and every other Castlevania game made by Koji Igarashi. Potentially.
But what could they actually do with Bloodstained based on the first game that's interesting?
New characters?
Yeah, they're probably going to need a new villain.
Yeah. You know what? Going into a different mythology might be interesting.
We're going to Dad of War this?
Maybe. Dad of War. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe they'll just make each Bloodstained game just a different protagonist in a different place.
Yeah, I mean,
they'll try to tell a connected story sort of that way, in the same way that Castlevania has the various Belmonts and assorted friends fighting Dracula.
That is an advantage that Castlevania has had. I mean, the fact that they were able to come up with Shinoa within the Castlevania universe and have it fit was actually an advantage of Castlevania. So yeah, Bloodstained could totally go that direction. They did have a lot of lore framework where you had the alchemists or whatever that place the runes inside the people, and it might be interesting if they completely ignored that for the next protagonist and did some other magic system for them. Again, like Shinoa, or none of the Castlevania Igavania games had two heroes that had the same source of power. I like how it seems like you just kind of fail these on purpose.
Probably
it is actually faster. Yeah.
That's very
Also, at
interesting.
this point, I hadn't really figured out what I was supposed to be doing. I think maybe this time I figured it out.
Well, you're moving really slow, so I can tell that it seems like what you're supposed to do is jump over to that greeny space, but
No, that's not it.
What?
just looking at it from the outside, that's what it looks like you're supposed to do. But
Yeah, like I assumed that I was supposed to like run over to that, but you can't run.
What can you dog?
Yeah, that's how you are supposed to do it.
don't you hate it when they like prevent you from doing things you're normally supposed to be able to do because they want you to do something specific?
Yeah, that's basically the case for this
That oh
activity.
Oh, man.
This game has a lot of activities.
Thank you for using the right phrase.
I was playing a game just
Like-
recently that did that.
Like right now, it's just like I have failed the pixel hunt part of the activity, and there's just like a piece of the activity that I don't know exists at this point.
Puzzles like this just drive me crazy, and I'm hoping that AAA gaming stops padding their game with this stuff. But I haven't played enough AAA games recently to know whether or not they do. I do. I think that I think that pacing is something to think about when you're making a game, and that's often why they add these puzzles, is to try and add quiet moments in combination with the action. This is why Metroidvania games are so great, is because the activity of exploring the castle is your slow moment, and it's like perfect because it's an activity that's actually fun and engaging, and you actually have to think about your surroundings, and at least in my opinion, I know some people don't like getting lost, but I take that over puzzles like this any day.
Yeah, can either of you guess what piece of the puzzle I'm missing right now?
I'm guessing you're missing a gear that fits into the door.
The door downstairs that has 3 keys.
I don't really know what you're doing with the key. There's a door right next to you that's not opening, so I think you need to fix the door.
Are you about to find the solution soon?
No, I recall that I backtrack and go through those 2 spike areas first. I'm probably in this area for way longer than the game designers would have expected me to be. And the thing that I'm missing is right here, where I'm standing.
What is it that you're missing?
You can use the time thing to reconstruct the platform there.
What the heck?
Hello, Retroidvania.
How's it going, Metroidvania? We were just about to move on to our next topic, I think, unless you had other thoughts about Bloodstained.
I have no thoughts about Bloodstained.
I have no further thoughts about Bloodstained.
Anyway, that's my biggest thing. I think that improve the story. If you take one thing out of this conversation, is that I want them to improve the story. So the next thing we wanted to talk about was something that we kind of got into last week, but it was kind of distracting from Room Fencer Ilya, so I kind of tried to move on from it. But let's go back to it, and that is the top 10 highest rated Metroidvania games on Steam and what we think. So I got the Steam list up here right now. And
So top rated, not what's popular.
top rated, yes. I mean, we can look at what's popular as well. I guess that's relevance. Would that be the filter that you would look at?
Well, I was looking at the list on the like actual Metroidvania page, like Metroidvania tag, and there's what's popular.
So Retroidvania is trying to guess what the games are in the chat, and also we're doing very well, Retroidvania.
It is relevance is what the filter winds up being.
Let's go with the user reviews. I think that's just as interesting, especially with the games that are on there.
Oh no. It's going to be like Jedi Fallen Order.
So Hollow Knight is unsurprisingly number one. And then Ori and the Will of the Wisps and Ori and the Blind Forest are, let's see, 2, 4, 6, and 7 respectively of the top 10. Let's see if you can guess the other 7 items.
Metroidvania sorted by user reviews with bundles excluded.
Yeah. Calderon's gonna cheat. What do you think, Master? What do you think? What else do you think is on there? You said Jedi Fallen Order?
Yes.
Jedi Fallen Order is not in the top 10 of the highest rated games. It's, I don't know, is it even on the first page? Let me see. There is one on there that I think that you'll enjoy that being on there. Jedi Fallen Order is on the first page, but it's like, I don't know, like 30 or 40? How many are showing on this page? Oh, I guess it's just one of those scrolls forever interfaces. Welcome, Potato Hands.
So wait, you said that Ori was number 2?
Ori is 6 and 7 respectively.
Okay.
So Potato Hands is suggesting we try the Steam database ratings. We can look at that second, I think. So number 2 is Toho Luna Nights. So there's a contrast. You have, Super Metroidvania game, Hollow Knight, and then you have Toho Luna Nights, which is relatively linear.
You have to wonder what the metric for this filter is, because what are they taking? The percentage of positive reviews, the total amount of positive reviews, some combination?
It's a combination of the number of reviews and the percentage. So Hollow Knight actually has over 132,000 reviews, which is actually really impressive when you think about it. Ori and the Will of the Wisps has 62,000 reviews, and Ori and the Blind Forest Definitive Edition has 40,000 reviews.
It looks like it's sorted by percentage, and then if they have the same percentage, then it's based on the number of reviews.
That might be it.
So it's like all the 97% are at the top, and then it goes into the 96%.
Believe it or not, Bloodstained is not in the top 10.
I don't really trust percent positive review rankings, to be honest.
Sure.
There's so many ways that those can kind of get fudged.
So Bloodstained's in the top 20, but not the top 10. So number 3 is Robbie Ribby, with an overwhelmingly positive 97% of 8,000 reviews.
If you don't like Robbie Ribby, you're probably not going to play Robbie Ribby in the first place.
Yeah, it's one of those games that, you're not going to... The hump for Robbie Ribby is actually purchasing the game. Getting past that title screen and then actually buying it. Then you're going to play it. And then... I guess actually I quit playing it the first time because I got sick of the dialogue, and then went back and skipped all the dialogue and liked it.
That was one of those games that I was apprehensive to play it, but once I got into it, I'm like, yeah, this is a very, very good game. Amazing game. It's just, I feel embarrassed to play it still. So Potato's Hand says that Steam rankings are generally not accurate reflections of public opinion. I agree with that. I'm interested to know how you could get an accurate depiction of public opinion, though, because part of the problem is participation.
It's literally impossible.
Yeah. And yeah, the niche games are going to have the And Toho might actually be up there because it's a niche thing too. Maybe, I don't know. And a lot of the top games are just really safe games that aren't particularly amazing but hard to hate. I don't know. I think Hollow Knight deserves to be on top myself. That's my biased opinion.
Yeah, a lot of people that I've talked, well, I guess not a lot of people, but some people that I've talked to like don't like Hollow Knight because it's punishing.
Sure. And I'm not saying there isn't legitimate reasons why you wouldn't like Hollow Knight, but SteamWorld Dig 2 is not in the top 10. Where is SteamWorld Dig 2? It's actually, I think it's barely in the top 20. So the one that comes
I'm surprised by that.
The one that comes after Robbie Ribby is Yoku's Island Express. So the top 4 I think is pretty solid. Not my top 4, but at least they're Metroidvania games, right? This is foreshadowing.
They do seem to be the niche games that have low amounts of negative reviews.
Except for Hollow
Looking
Knight.
ahead at number 5.
Number 5, Dead Cells. Everyone's favorite Metroidvania game. All of the popular game journalists kept calling a Metroidvania. I like Dead Cells. I think it's a fun game.
It's a fun game. It's just not worth talking about because it's not a Metroidvania. Not even close.
I'm gonna be forever mad about like the bait and switch feeling that I got from that game.
It's all about expectations sometimes. I think it's a lot of fun. I actually would play a lot. I have my criticisms of it. I think that as far as roguelike setups go, I'm not like super experienced with it, but I have experienced a few of them now. And I would say it's not even my favorite roguelike platformer game. There are aspects that I definitely like, though. Is The Messenger in the top 10? The Messenger, which actually won Game of the Year for 2019 on the rMetroidvania subreddit, I think. Is that right, Master?
Still embarrassed by that.
The Messenger is in like...
Darksiders 3 got robbed that year.
The Messenger is in the top 30, possibly past the 40th place. So it's actually not that high. Let's see here.
Surprising. I thought everyone loved The Messenger.
So as I mentioned, 6 and 7 are Ori and the Will of the Wisps and Ori and the Blind Forests. And then number 8. Can anyone guess what number 8 is?
Master owns this game.
Yeah, maybe.
God, that could be so many things. It's not going to be like La Mulana or something, is it?
It's a game that you own that Professor Q does not.
I don't have that game yet. So Potato Hand says that I thought people's opinion was the Metroidvania elements in the message were weak.
Control.
Yeah, I mean, that's the general consensus I've heard. I don't know if I agree with that opinion. Like, if you took that section out and made a Metroidvania game out of it, then I would say yes, the Metroidvania elements in the Messenger were weak. I think within the context of the Messenger, though, I think they work well. Anyway, the last, or the 8th place is Inside.
What?
Because that has the Metroidvania tag.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
It's not even at the first 4 tags.
It's... what?
Have you played Inside yet?
I've played Inside. It's definitely not a Metroidvania. There's like... It's a linear, like, narrative platformer.
It's a platformer.
And I think there's technically like one upgrade that you get that you just, you use it to interact with the puzzles / activities you're presented as you're moving from left to right on the screen.
So far we have 2 games on this list that really just aren't Metroidvanias.
It's got to be like really low on the tag list because I don't see why people would tag that.
Yeah, it's actually...
And then it's just still on the list because of whatever, sorting algorithm we're using.
It's underneath stealth and above gore and violent on the list of tags. I thought that was funny when I saw that on there, though. But it gets better. So number 9 is Batman Arkham Asylum Game of the Year edition. That's not
Featured on the
terribly
podcast.
surprising. What's that?
Featured on the podcast on like the second episode.
Yeah, I think that was the second episode of the podcast. That's not terribly surprising. If you count that as a Metroidvania, it makes sense that would be higher up on the list, since that's one of those classic games. I think that people always tout as being one of the best games of all time. I, have my own opinion about it, but it's one of those that people remember fondly.
It makes more sense to be on the list than like
Inside.
Well, yeah.
Or Dead Cells.
Like, I'm not even mad that that's on the list.
So guess what's next? Shovel Knight, Treasure Trove. I love that sign.
This is more a discussion of how bad the Metroidvania tag is on Steam.
So it's just above RPG on the tags for Shovel Knight. You do get ability upgrades in that game, sort of. They do help you access treasure more easily, I think. Am I wrong on that? Maybe you do Inspector Knight?
Pretty much Mega Man, but with a shovel.
The coldest silence coming from Master right now.
We broke him with
Sorry.
Inside.
Anyway, that was number 10. So let's pretend that Inside and Dead Cells and Shovel Knight aren't on the list, and let's go ahead and keep going as if the top 10 was to replace those items. And with that in mind, the next one on the list is Supraland.
I haven't played that game. I have no opinion.
Yeah.
Are we still mad about the Metroidvania of the Year vote with Superland?
I mean, we don't really need to talk about that.
I like
Kind
Supraland
of old
a lot.
news. I'm not gonna say the game's worse because of that. Just haven't played it.
VVV is after Supraland.
Don't think that's a Metroidvania.
It's non-linear, or you can go you basically can go to levels in any order you want. It's sort of like Mario 64, except that the levels are actually part of the map. So I could kind of see someone arguing that it is, but there are no ability upgrades, so that kind of pulls it off the list for that. And then after VVV, it's Mark of the Ninja Remastered. I don't know enough about this game, but I'm pretty sure it's not a Metroidvania.
I played a little bit of it. It's fun, but it's a level-based action platformer, and there are upgrades. Like you're buying stuff to just help you hurt things better. It's not a Metroidvania.
And then Ori and the Blind Forest, not the definitive edition, is below Ninja Mark of the Ninja, Batman Arkham City. Is that one? That one's not as Metroidvania as the Batman Arkham Asylum, right? Or is it more Metroidvania than Batman Arkham Asylum?
That Arkham City is kind of open world, as opposed to being kind of linear. I mean, you could make the argument that you could have more interesting backtracking, because you can't just it's not limiting you to going forward a lot of the time. Actually, it's been a while since I've played it, so I couldn't say how Metroidvania it is.
Yeah, it's more like you need ability upgrades to get into certain areas instead of needing to escape an area by using an ability upgrade. Yeah, I guess that's the main difference between a ability-gated open world game and a Metroidvania. Is in a Metroidvania you're being tied inward by the ability gates, whereas in an open world game you're being kept out of an area, interior by the ability upgrades or ability gates. And the comparison between Arkham City and Arkham Asylum it kind of exemplifies that.
So underneath Batman Arkham City is Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, then Dust and Elysian Tale. I wanted to bring that up just because I think it's funny that it's that high on the list. Still loved by the community, I guess. Then Antichamber.
Is that still on the subreddit's banner?
Yeah, it was actually funny when I did the intro for the video, the top 10 from a couple weeks ago at this point. Dust is in the intro because it was also on the banner. And they're like, don't put Dust in the intro. It's not even that Metroidvania. I'm like, people like it. It's fine.
Well, who said that to not put that in?
I'm not going to call them out.
Was it somebody who would be at all responsible for the banner?
Maybe not. Anyway,
Okay.
So Antichamber is the next one on the list, which I thought was cool. I should try that one. I think you mentioned that you felt that might be appropriate, Master. You played Antichamber?
I've played it. I actually replayed it recently. I wouldn't call it a Metroidvania. I guess there is kind of ability gating. You have like a cube gun, and then you technically get 2 abilities for it. And the game kind of crisscrosses along sort of a map, but it's not exactly. You're kind of linearly being teleported to different locations on the map in a specific order, but then you're able to leave the order and you can find optional rooms and stuff, I guess. It's hard to explain, actually, if you didn't notice.
Sure. I mean, I know it's a very abstract game. I think I played it briefly. I didn't get very far into it, though. And then
I at least see why someone would call it a Metroidvania.
The last one.
It's not like super crazy.
The last one on this list I wanted to just mention is Reventures on there, which I know is not a Metroidvania, but it's interesting. That's the game with 100 endings. So I'm looking at Steam database, and I don't know how to filter that on Metroidvania. Maybe I'm just not skilled enough in this, or not seeing where the button is. But I thought it might be fun to look at what the top rated Metroidvania games were on there, but I'm not sure if it has the tags. But anyway, so that was that. I don't know. I feel like the top 4 is okay. Let's see.
Yeah, Totally Lunar Nights is kind of like one of those iffy ones.
So Potato Hands just linked me a site for LorenzoStanco.com. Let's take a look at this and see if we can filter with that. Oh, it looks like you've already got it filtered by that. It looks like the list is relatively the same. The order is different. So you have Batman Arkham Asylum is number 2 and Dead Cells is number 3. So that makes this an even better list. Inside is number 4. And then Robbie Ribby is... and then Robbie Ribby looks like it's number 7. And then Toho Luna Nights 8. And Batman Arkham City 9. And Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is 10. And Shovel Knight is 12. So... really what we need to do is just get the brigade together and get those tags removed on those games.
So do we want to conjecture on what Steam thinks the definition of a Metroidvania is?
Does Steam have an opinion? I'm pretty sure Steam is just a heartless robot.
Well, Steam is combining the opinions of multiple people. So Steam as the user base that has decided to tag these things.
Yes, so we're wondering why the Steam user base decided to tag it.
Any platformer is a Metroidvania. Any game with upgrades is a Metroidvania.
So Celeste,
any 2D game is a Metroidvania.
Celeste had the Metroidvania tag for about a month after its release.
They got rid of it.
Yes, they actually managed to get it voted off. I don't know if the... so the developer does have power to remove any tags, I found out. So it's possible that the team themselves removed it or the community voted it off. One of the two. But for like things like Inside and stuff like that, 2D platformer is probably anytime you go left instead of just right, people think it's a Metroidvania. Apparently,
I'm gonna go vote off some tags right now.
he just.
I love how you have to like report the tag as if it's like
It's evil.
like
Evil
harassment,
tag.
yeah, or whatever. I am offended by this tag.
You're right. So like looking at Inside, that there's like 24 tags listed when you look at it, and Metroidvania is like 20 tags down. So not that many people have actually voted for it, but
Enough.
apparently enough.
Dead Cells Metroidvania is like at the top. Metroidvania roguelike Souls-like. I don't even know where the. Oh
I think
gosh.
the developers legitimately think that it's a Metroidvania.
Sure. Who it was Just Right just put out a video about Hollow Knight and why it's his favorite game, and he defined Souls-like in that video, and I was just kind of cringing as he was defining it, and I'm like, one of the big features of a Souls-like is difficulty. I'm like, oh no, don't.
Confirmed Battletoads is a Souls-like.
don't put that in the
Crash
definition.
Bandicoot
And then he's
is
like,
my favorite Souls-like.
another thing that makes it a Souls-like is the environmental storytelling. I'm like, no. Like, yes, all the From Software Souls games have environmental storytelling, but that is not what makes it a Souls-like. Because if that were the case, Super Metroid is a Souls-like.
I do find it really funny when people try to define certain things based on what a certain game has done.
Yeah.
So like Metroidvania does?
Yeah. Like, if I were to define a Souls-like, I would say that you would have to have, stamina management, more cerebral, slower, telegraph-heavy combat, with some kind of risk involved for failure. Those would be the big traits that I would focus in on. And like Hollow Knight, I would say is not a Souls-like because the combat isn't cerebral enough. It's more like Mega Man X, where it's about positioning and speed more than it is about timing. Heavily high startup and high recovery attacks.
I
I'm
hate
not
the word
sure-
cerebral.
Yeah, I don't think cerebral is the right word for this, especially since like there isn't very much like thought going on with playing a Souls-like game.
You don't think so? I think so. Like when you're going through the
It's like you just wait until the attack and then you press the button at the right time and then you don't take damage.
well, now you're just what's the word? You're oversimplifying it, I think. Especially if you're going into the game blind. I think that once you get used to the game, yeah, sure, you can go into the timing a lot more, but for dodging and all that. But maybe not. I mean, Bloodborne obviously is less slow and less based off of that. But anyway, taking it slow in a Souls-like is part of the main strategy. That's not the case in Hollow Knight, I don't think.
Yeah, I think the main difference is that it's a slower game. That doesn't necessarily... Like, a game being slower doesn't necessarily mean that it's more thought-based.
I would argue that because it's slower, you have the capability of using thought more. Like... something like I think another extreme would be like Super Meat Boy, where you jump in and you got to make your decisions quick. You got to go, super fast. It's more about how you train your muscle memory to be able to react to specific situations, and less about, okay, this is happening, what are my options, and like in the case of like Dark Souls, when you hit your attack button, you still have that wind up before you actually do your hit, so you have to take that into account. kind of plan your abilities out rather than reacting, specifically just reacting to everything. Anyway, we could talk about this all day, I think, if we wanted to. I think we've tried talking about this all day, haven't we? In a previous episode?
Probably.
I think we probably would have gotten into it kind of like this if we did that.
Maybe. This is the type of thing where I feel like I need to take notes and come up with specific examples and find the best words to say. I am not saying that when I say that there's more thought involved with a Souls-like game, I'm not saying that you need to be smarter to play a Souls-like game than you do to play Hollow Knight. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it uses different parts of your brain.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier on the Metroidvania Review Discord about the difference between Castlevania and Ninja Gaiden. Castlevania has the same thing going on as a Souls-like, actually. So obviously Castlevania is a Souls-like, right?
It's difficult.
It's difficult. There's no environmental storytelling in the original Classicvania games, but we're talking about Classicvania here when we're comparing to Ninja Gaiden. In Castlevania, Classicvania, when you swing your whip, you have that wind up on your whip. There's a delay before you make your attack. So you have to take that into account when you're attacking enemies, and it slows the game down in a way that makes it so you have to plan your abilities more rather than just react. Whereas Ninja Gaiden, you swing your sword, it comes out instantly, and not only that, you can rapidly fire it in front of you. The way you approach combat and action is completely different between the two games. And making those observations is not me making a value judgment on either of those. I think that they both have their merits.
Right.
For the types of games that they are. But in my opinion, a Souls-like has that slower, more deliberate combat.
Yeah, I think that's a better way of describing it.
Perhaps.
But also part of that is the stamina management. You're not only managing the wind-ups and the wind-ups of enemies and etc., but also you have an economy that you're dealing with the stamina management. And I think that that's the thing that's often missed when people try and give the Souls-like identifier. Like, obviously Hollow Knight doesn't have that. It's something Blasphemous doesn't have. And that difference alone changes a lot of the way you approach the combat. And in my opinion, it becomes less Souls-like in that way. Of course, if you follow that definition strictly, you would have to say that Sekiro is not a Souls-like. But some people would agree with that anyway.
Yeah, so Sekiro is a rhythm game.
Dark Souls is a rhythm game too. It's just a slower rhythm.
Yeah. Anyway, it's hard to. I wouldn't put difficulty in environmental storytelling on the list if I was to make a list. I'm not saying that my definition of Souls-like should be adhered to, but it does make me tilt my head a little bit when you put two things that are traits of basically any game and then say, okay, it's a Souls-like because of this. But sometimes it's hard to put a rubric on it, just like Metroidvania. Anyway, that was a tangent.
Back to what we were saying about how every Castlevania game after Castlevania 3 is fanfiction.
I mean, you could argue that, I guess. How do you define fanfiction?
Why is that the division? Like, why is 3 not fanfiction and 4 is?
So, DC Comics have a million different versions of Batman, one where he kills, one where he doesn't. Which of those are fan fiction when they're all official DC Comics? The line between fan fiction and professional writers can start to blur depending on how much skill the professional writer or the official writers have versus the fans that are writing. It's kind of a funny thing.
You could argue that it is when the intent of the work differs from the original intent of the author.
Right, but for something like Batman, who's the original author? I mean, does that mean that everything that came after what the original author who created Batman did is all that fan fiction at that point?
I don't know.
Anyway, let's do our last topic. I think that's a fun topic to end off on. And we've got about 20 minutes left to talk about it. And that is, what are our most anticipated upcoming Metroidvania games? I'm going to go last, guys, so you guys got to pick up.
Okay.
So let's get some obvious ones out of the way first. Silksong. We talked about Rune Fencer Elia last time.
I like how that's an obvious one. I don't know if that's an obvious one for anyone outside of the rMetroidvania Discord, possibly.
Well, it's obvious because we all talked about it last time.
That's true. I mean, I put that on my list, but personally, I think that it probably needs more attention than it has. Basically, if you're not Silksong, you probably deserve more attention.
And then I'm just gonna list off the ones that I remember from the Discord. There's Refactor, Raygun Gadabout,
Vernal Edge.
yeah, Vernal Edge.
Vernal Edge looks neat.
I think that's all the big ones, the ones that are long into development.
So at the beginning of this stream, I said that this type of combat, speaking of Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2, never appealed to me. And yet for some reason, Valdis Story, Abyssal City, has the 2D version of this kind of combat. And I thought it was great. And I think part of it is that it's just has a lot of depth with the animation canceling mechanics and stuff like that. But then Vernal Edge also appeals to me because of that.
Yeah, this game's mostly just parrying at the right time.
Oh, Potato Hands just gave us a list of the most wish-listed games on Steam.
Oh.
Comes in clutch, thank you.
Of the upcoming Metroidvania games. Neat.
Oh, I forgot that game called Fist is apparently a Metroidvania. Still don't believe it.
It could be. Speaking of AAA Metroidvania games, though, this game has probably the highest production values outside of Ori that I've seen in a Metroidvania game. I don't know. I guess when Shadow Complex came out, it was probably close to what this. It's an analog to what this is today. Obviously, this looks better, but it's also 10 years down the road. There is no light. I don't know that I've heard of this game, and is that because it's a top-down game?
It looks like it's a turn-based RPG.
Is it turn-based?
Maybe.
It says it's Souls-like.
I don't know.
Or has the Souls-like tag.
I guess it looks like it might be.
So anyway, I guess we could go through this list real quick, unless you guys had other ones that you wanted to...
I guess one game that I kind of want to point out is Transmute is one that I'm pretty excited about. It's kind of like a Super Metroid-y game, but one of the things that they were saying is that there's going to be multiple routes through the game, because you can get different ability upgrades to get into different areas, and so not all of them are going to be mandatory. So it sounds like it's going to have a lot of replay value and a lot of freedom in how you go through the game.
Yeah, Transmute looks really good, I think. I kind of felt the same way when I saw the first screenshots of Outbodies, though, so... Well, this one looks like it has more... I don't want to use the word streamlined. The mechanics are simplified, perhaps, is the best way of putting it. They're more similar to what you might find in a Metroid game, I guess.
And then one that I want to mention is Playbound. That was one that they were all over the subreddit for a long time, and everyone was really excited about it. and then it seemed to have just like disappeared.
Wasn't that called like Kevin's World for a while?
Like I think that was like what everyone was calling it.
The working title,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, it didn't have like a real name until they called it Playbound later. So people were just like, it's Kevin's World.
That looks really neat. I think what happens is that when a developer first starts a game, they get really excited about it, and then they get deep into it, and then they get really quiet for a while. At least that's what I'm hoping. I've seen a lot of developers that were really active on posting things in like the rMetroidvania Discord as well as the Metroidvania Review Discord, and then they've kind of gone silent. And I wonder about them. I've thought about adding them to see how things are going, but development's hard. This is the thing that I think every developer has to discover on their own. It's actually really difficult to make a game.
Yeah.
The Recompile dev will be very pleased to know that their game is on pretty high up on the top 10. Or on the top, it's not in the top 10, but, or is it? Let me see, 2, 4, 6, 8, just barely at number 10. Recompile is on the, one of the most wish-listed Metroidvania games coming out.
Nice.
Yeah, I wonder if, like, so there's this Urza's Wheel of Fortune, like Frontier Hunter Urza's Wheel of Fortune. I played a bit of the original and it seemed like it was kind of like a Dead Cells type game, but without the procedural generation. I wonder if this one's going to be more Metroidvania.
They claim it's going to be more Metroidvania. That's what they said in their original announcement anyway. I find it interesting that it's in the top wish-listed games. That's surprising to me. That it's that high up on the wish lists.
Yeah, like above Crowspawn, even.
Yeah, especially after Crowspawn got that attachment to Hollow Knight. I'm surprised about that. Gestalt, Steven Cinder being number 2 is no surprise at all. The Last Faith as well. Played the demo for that. A lot of people looked at that and said, oh, it's 2D Bloodborne, and it really isn't. But that doesn't mean it's bad, but I just think it's interesting that I think that might be the reason why a lot of people are wishlisting it, is because it has that Bloodborne vibe to it.
Well, a lot of people also really like Blasphemous, and it seems like it's kind of like Blasphemous with a Bloodborne skin on it.
Yeah, maybe. It's not really like Blasphemous.
Yeah, but it looks like Blasphemous.
Yeah, that's all it takes, really.
Yeah.
Unbound Worlds Apart is actually a little bit surprising to me that one's so high on the list, but it does look cool. It's just I don't hear people talking about it, is why it surprises me. Flynn Son of Crimson, I believe, has been... They've changed it, that it's not going to be a Metroidvania now.
Oh.
I'll pick it up my wish list.
How do you just make that decision?
Like you can see, if you look at the Steam store page, it has a map, like a Mario 3 type style map. I think they just decided it was just too ambitious to make it a Metroidvania, which is actually a very good decision to make early on in development. So that's good that they did.
Could still be a crest-like.
So then there's
Metroidvania is the lowest tag. It's even below Zombies.
Flynn.
And Flynn, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I believe that Amo, the developer for Rim Fencer Ilya, knows the developer, and they explicitly have said that they not given up, but they decide to go a different direction than the Metroidvania design. So it might be like Panpaku.
Oh, something random. Ghost Song says it's releasing 2021. Not that I'm excited for this game because I know nothing about it and I don't get excited by things, but
I find it interesting that it used to be that Adult Swim was going to be its publisher, but now it doesn't have a publisher.
I just know it's been in development, or at least it's been on Steam for like 7 years now.
Yeah, it's been on
So,
there for a
Master,
while.
you're not even excited about the Llama Lana 2 DLC?
Oh, I'm so excited, but you see, I have to wait for the DLC to come out before I can play La Milana again. So it makes me sad because I was just about to start playing it.
Yes, I'm sure.
So, Greek Memories of Azure is also on the top 10 list. I think this game looks really cool. It's a multi-character game being published by Team 17. Team 17 has been like an all-star when it comes to publishing Metroidvania games recently. Looks neat, great art style. I like the idea of multiple characters. It's not always done well, but always, I like the idea. So the ambition intrigues me. So, good list. I think that everybody should take a look at this link that I'll put in the YouTube description, but with Potato Hands linked. Everybody should take a look at it. Did you have any other upcoming Metroidvania games that you're looking forward to, Master?
Oh, Silk Song. Yeah. I mean, I don't really get excited for a lot of Metroidvania games because I find it really hard to judge the qualities that I look for in a Metroidvania just from trailers and stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of my problem is that, like, a lot of them, the hardest part about making a most anticipated games list is that it requires that I know a lot about the games that are coming out, and I don't because, they haven't come out. So, unsurprisingly, the games I'm anticipating the most are the ones I've actually played demos for, and, see more of the game than just the store page and the key concepts that are advertised there. Generally speaking, I try not to. How's it going, Salmace? Generally speaking, I try not to play favorites because any game could end up being great. But for this exercise, I did actually make a top 10 list of just games that I remembered that I was looking forward to. And I actually did put Ring Fencer Ilya on there. We talked about that last week, though, so I won't go too much into that. Some games that are coming around just the corner are Ender Lilies and Asylum Tears of the Earth. Asylum actually comes out tomorrow. So I put those high on the list because I know that those are pretty much here at this point, so it's hard to anticipate something that's already here. But I did play the demos for both of those, and I think that they both have very fantastic premises. Ender Lilies I like because its theming is very strong, and I'm really looking forward to how the story develops on that game. Asylum Tears of the Earth, you have multiple characters, but you can't just change them at any time. You have to go back to a campfire to switch them, so all of the challenges are based around not having abilities that other characters might have, and it becomes like a puzzle box in that sense. I actually think that you might be interested in that one a lot, Master. You should play the demo for that one.
Okay.
Definitely check it out. Then next on my list, I put two games that, from a mechanic standpoint, really stuck out to me. Gustava, Witches of Arcana. I have a Mega Man bias. I'm a big Mega Man fan. And Gustava, Witches of Arcana looks like a Mega Man-like, but it's also a Metroidvania. I keep wanting them to make a good... I keep wanting them to make a good Mega Man Metroidvania game, and I was really disappointed in the Mega Man ZX games. And I don't think I've played a good Mega Man Metroidvania yet, so I'm hoping that one turns out well, just for my own biases. I also put The Siege and the Sand Fox. Have you heard of that one, either of you two?
Oh yeah, that's the one that's supposed to be like stealth-based. Kind of like a Creed-ish, maybe. Like, at least the theming seems kind of Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, that was the thing that intrigued me about it, is I don't think that besides Mark of the Ninja, which, as we know, is one of the top 10 Metroidvania games on Steam, there really hasn't been a stealth Metroidvania, at least like full-fledged stealth Metroidvania out there. And stealth is one of those mechanics that you either do it right or your game is terrible. So this game could go either way, but if they do it right, one of my favorite games growing up was Metal Gear Solid, so I like the stealth genre when it's done right, I think. And this one, I think, is that's why I put it on the list. Then I had two games that I put on the list because of their connection to other games that I played. Crowsworn. is on my list, and that is because I really like Unworthy a lot. And when I found out that Crowstorm was made by the same dev team as Unworthy, that's actually what got me actually interested in it. There was the big controversy because, it looked too much like Hollow Knight or whatever. But once I found out it was made by the Unworthy, and I was always skeptical of that. I'm like, it looks fine, it looks good. But now that I know it's made by the Unworthy team, I'm actually really excited to see how they develop the concepts that they started at Unworthy and, moving into a new game. Then there's Chronicles of the Wolf, which is, I think, linked. Was that linked on the rMetroidvania, or was that one that was just got passed around on the Discord? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think I saw it in the Discord, like specifically the Metroidvania review Discord.
Yeah, I think that it was.
That was the Lacard Chronicles 2 developer, right?
Yeah, I actually think it was number 4 that put that one on the Metroidvania or on the Metroidvania review Discord. But anyway, it's made by Megami Games. It's their newest game, and it looks like Lacard Chronicles 2, so it's basically Lacard Chronicles 3, possibly. I really like that game, so excited to see what this one does. I'm also excited to see that they're making their own IP out of it so that they can actually sell it, because I think they deserve support for their talents. So looking forward to that. And then I have 2 other games I put on the list strictly because of how the game looks. I know very little about them, but I thought that they looked really cool graphically. So one of them was Akatori. That is it used to be called Death Stick, but then they changed the name to Akatori. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just like acknowledging, I remember that game. It's cool.
Like the combat animations look really fluid, and it kind of reminds me of Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight, and I really like Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight. So I have no idea whether or not it's actually going to turn out that way. This could totally be one of those Deedlit and Wonder Labyrinth things where everybody looked at it and said, "Oh, that looks like Symphony of the Night. Let's go get it." And then they find out it's nothing like Symphony of the Night. Gonna keep my mind open. It might not be what I think it is, but it looks really cool to me. And then there's Phaland, which I think is actually being published by a branch of Square Enix. But something about the way Phaland looks is very nostalgic of like Quest for Glory to me. And so it kind of triggers a nostalgic response, and that was 100% the reason why I have it on my anticipated list, because I'm really curious if those graphics will be connected to something that it's actually good. Is why I put it on my list. Potato's Hand says that visually their favorite by far is Curse of the Sea Rats. Yeah, that game reminds me of like Don Bluth movies. Like it reminds me of like American Tail style art. I think it looks really neat. I also like the fact that it's a co-op Metroidvania, and there's not enough of those. So I look forward to playing that with my co-op buddy. And of course, there's Heartforth Alicia. Yes, Heartforth Alicia. I think it looks. I think pixel art wise, it looks fantastic. Gameplay wise, from what they've shown, I think it looks very good. Yeah, I mean, it's up there with like Plague Hunter. I could probably put those on my top anticipated lists as well. Actually, the most recent trailer of Plague Hunter Plague Huntress, makes that game look absolutely amazing. It looks like an Igavania, but more in the vein of Order of Ecclesia in terms of depth of combat, possibly more depth. But Heartforth Alicia looks kind of non-traditional in the way that it approaches combat, which can be good or bad. But yeah, I definitely look forward to that one as well. Hopefully it actually finishes. How long has that been in development now? 12 years?
It's been like a decade.
It's been longer than that, yeah. Or it's been... I want to say 2008 was when it started. And then they had a Kickstarter, I think, in 2014. So even...
Yeah, so it's probably taken its own path quite a bit.
Yeah. It's a shame. It's a shame that they didn't release it earlier, because I feel like it's harder and harder now to stay relevant. Games will come out and get completely ignored. That if they came out, 5 years ago, they would have been classics like Cave Story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like if Cave Story came out today, it probably wouldn't. Like no one would care.
No, I don't think anybody would. Like, I found out about Cave Story. I was working as a janitor at my college, and one of my coworkers was just like, "Oh yeah, there's this game that you can get for free from this Japanese website. It's amazing." I went and downloaded it. I'm like, "Yeah, this game is great." So it was like this, I don't know, just hidden gem that people would pass around, and there's just too many games now for that to be a thing anymore. There are no secret games that you can find on the internet that. Yeah,
There's lots of obscure games out there. Just you can't find them on Steam because they're obscure.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is if it's not on Steam, people just kind of completely ignore it now. There's a few games on itch.io that there's actually one that was released last week that it just won't get attention because it's not on a platform that people search on. Really kind of a shame. Like, it's good that we have so many options these days, but at the same time, it's hard for the players in the sense that we can't play everything we want. That's frustrating, and it's hard for the developers that they don't get the audience they deserve.
What we need to do is predict what gamers will want in 5 years, which will be exactly the same things they want now because they're unsatisfied by everything.
So we need to make FIFA like 2035.
I don't know. What are people anticipating now? It was Cyberpunk until everybody got disappointed by that.
Yeah.
What is the
people just want good RPGs? They don't exist.
I want to say Breath of the Wild is probably the most anticipated game, like in the public eye right now. Breath of the Wild 2, I mean. I'm calling it Breath of the Wild 2. It probably will have a different subtitle. Biomutant was the same thing, according to Potato Hands, that it wasn't as good as people expected, perhaps. Silksong, I think, might be possibly the most anticipated game out there, but that's from my perspective.
Yeah, it's hard to judge.
Yeah. Oh, it was easy to judge 6 months ago before Cyberpunk came out. That was by and far the most anticipated game I'd ever seen.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't think there is a Cyberpunk right now.
But sadness.
Nothing but sadness. I think everybody.
So people.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say people want like good RPGs.
Yeah. I think the only AAA title that I'm like actually anticipating is the next God of War.
I'm looking forward to Breath of the Wild 2. I am curious about Metroid Prime 4, as a lot of people are. But, all I have from that is a title screen and a tweet that says that they're looking for an emotional writer. Which could be good or bad.
Is the writer supposed to be emotional, or are they supposed to be writing things that are emotional?
Is there a difference?
They just want someone to liven up the workplace.
Like, please give us drama.
There's not enough drama in our office.
People say they want good AI in their games that they play, and AI has pretty much only gotten worse. At least I feel like. Yeah, but like if you had really good AI, that might not be fun to play.
That's true.
Well, AI is fun to play against, not necessarily like hard to beat.
Yeah, it's true though. AI. I mean, it's also just really hard to make good AI in general. But
sure.
It's like, how do you make something that works? Nobody knows. You have to use an AI to make your AI.
Well, unless anybody else has any other games to bring up, I think that wraps up what we had for tonight.
Oh, there's a couple of games that I was surprised aren't higher on the list. Like Steam Dolls was like
Oh yeah,
pretty big for a while.
Steam Dolls has David Hayter as a voice actor, I think.
Yeah, that was one of the like main things about it.
I'm actually really surprised that's not higher up on the list.
I like David Hayter and all, but I don't trust a game that advertises itself as having David Hayter in it.
Is Steam Dolls even on this list?
Yeah, it's just
There
below.
it is. Yeah. Oh, it's under Ruby. Gosh, Ruby's been coming out for a long time too. Brave Earth looks really neat, graphically speaking, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's
Pretty
made
sure
by
it's
the I
classic
Want to Be
Vita.
the Guy. Yeah.
Oh, is this the I Want to Be the guy?
Yep.
Oh, neat. Oh, well then add that to my list. Like I said, I try not to play favorites. There's just so many good things out there. Like I'm looking at this list and one that I wanted to mention was Necrosphere, and I actually forgot to write that on my list. That one is it's kind of like Starflight if you've ever played that on the Sega Genesis, but you go to multiple planets and the planets are each Metroidvania. Super ambitious. Definitely look forward to see how that one develops. But yeah, looking at this list of games, I highly recommend everyone check it out and make the rich richer on this highest number of wish listed games.
Or just go to the bottom of the list and start wish listing things.
Yeah, I guess that's another option. I've got
Slovenia.
I
Played
have
Slovenia on the stream before.
I have every Metroidvania I come across on my wish list, so except for Little Kitty Big City, apparently. How come this is on the highest? And why is it tagged as a Metroidvania? I'm very curious about this now. 3D platformer. Huh.
Available. Cats don't have deadlines.
Nice. Well, I better add this to my wish list now, since it's tagged as a Metroidvania. Not that it matters if it's not a Metroidvania.
If you're not logged in, looking at the top wish lists list, there are actually some games that are excluded based off of the default Steam preferences. You can guess what that means.
Oh yeah, there's a few.
My Forest Home Deluxe has been
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Little Kitty Big City looks really cute. I agree. I just don't know if it's a Metroidvania just from looking at it. I could be completely wrong on that though.
Oh, yeah, these are... Yeah, I can see why these are excluded.
there's definitely adult Metroidvanias out there, and there's some that are apparently pretty high quality from a gameplay standpoint.
Okay, what is it with, like, those two genres mixing? I feel like I see that way more than I...
What, adult Metroidvanias?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't looked into the adult games. I'd say that probably visual novel is the biggest genre for adult games.
Well,
Probably
besides
be
that.
more like adult Metroidvanias because you're looking at more Metroidvanias.
Something with actual gameplay, it's like they are Metroidvanias. Or at least platformers.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't done a sample of adult games to know what's common for that. The adult games are kind of a dilemma for me. I'm like, do I cover them? How do I cover them on my website? If I do cover them on my website, does that make my website flagged for being adult? I don't know what to do with those.
You can make a second website, the Adult Metroidvania.
The adult Metroidvania review. Yeah, but then there's also the part where it's I have no idea how to rate that stuff. Considering that's a core appeal, the best thing I can do is just rate the Metroidvania aspect of the game when I feel like that's not the entire point of the game. So it's kind of a hard thing to say. Of course, you could argue that my approach to Robbie Ribby, looking at it as a Metroidvania game primarily, might not be right if the core appeal is actually the Moe aspect, but I don't know.
I don't like that idea.
What's that?
That people play that game.
Oh, that's why they play it. I don't know. It's a great game. So maybe some of those porn Metroidvania games are great games. It's hard to say.
See, now that we've mentioned this topic on the stream, it's just tainted your website forever.
Well, the only thing to take away from this is I don't know what to do with them. So with this, are you just trying to wait for them to break the platform so you can go up?
Oh.
Seems like...
Oh yeah, so I wasn't even watching this stream. Yeah, so yeah, they have to like break each of the posts on the platform, and then you can go through it.
Also, I think it's really funny how Alucard stares intently at the camera whenever you respawn.
I like how he's like reading about himself dying.
Yeah.
That part cracks me up. I also like how this person like nicely telegraphs with the big purple symbol every time. Anyway, any other thoughts before we sign off for the night?
No.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.